What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again. And this time we got Matthew of Mason Hill. Thank you for being here today, man. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. We got the new album Against the Wall officially out now. It came out in March of this year. Do you just want to talk about how the making of this album was in terms of the songwriting and the recording and how this record sort of came to see the light of day?
Yeah, so this record's taken way longer than it really should have to see the light of day. It's went a meandering path. I mean, technically, we started writing this 5 years ago. This album, it's unbelievable to say, but this album was initially meant to come out on our previous record label. We decided that wasn't going to be the case. We parted ways mutually. That put us back about a year and a half from where we wanted to be. Then we basically took all the songs, rewrote everything from the start. There's very few parts of what was the debut album when we were signed to that deal that actually became the debut album. So we went back to the drawing board on a lot of things: our management, our label, how we were releasing it, how we were writing, how we were recording, and yeah, then we got ready. We had the songs in hand, and we just needed to get the album into the world. And to do that, we done a Kickstarter campaign. So it was our fans who helped make this a reality. They done all the pre-orders, way ahead of schedule, way ahead of where you would usually do it, and that gave us the money to actually go into the studio that we wanted, and to get the producers and the engineers and stuff on board that we had our eye on, that we could have never have afforded, at that point. So yeah, the fans made it a reality, and then of course COVID came along and knocked another 9 months down the road. So technically we wanted this out in May of 2020, but we wanted to give it the best possible chance, and naively thought that March 21 would have been out of this. We're not. So we couldn't make the fans wait any longer, and we just had to get it into their hands and really get creative on how we promoted the album, which I think we've done. I think we've done a really good job with it. All things considered, we never got to hit the road, but we will be soon, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but it almost seems like everything that could have gone wrong with the process of releasing an album happened. I was interviewing the band from England yesterday, Evile, and they kind of had like a similar scenario, just like, oh, lineup change, and then the pandemic, and then all this. But I think the results were worth it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. It was hurdle after hurdle. And we used to joke at shows, because fans have been chasing this album for a number of years, at least, two years. People have been jokingly asking, where is it? And we always used to joke 2021, obviously thinking no chance that 2021 will be the actual result. But here we are in 21, and it's only just came out. So it turns out we weren't joking.
Yeah, the joke's not that funny anymore.
No, it's not. It's tragic now.
Yeah. And being that you mentioned you were writing this over the course of 5 years, is what we're hearing on this album basically how these songs were originally written and arranged and structured, or did like the ideas for the sound of this record sort of change a lot over a span of time?
Yeah, it's morphed as the band's sort of grown with our sound and experiences. So some of the names, if people have been following us from the beginning, people will recognise some of the song names, but they wouldn't recognise the arrangements if they took, that song name and put it to 3 years ago when they first heard it. I think the first incarnation, if you will, of this album was classic rock through and through. There really wasn't much of a modern hint to it. But as we've came along and listened to different bands and taken different influences, that I think that it's still got a lot of classic rock in there, but I think it does have a lot more of a modern edge now, whereas it wouldn't have before. I'm happy that I'm not happy it took so long to get to that point, but I'm happy we didn't release what we had initially, because I think we've got a much, much stronger debut album now.
Yeah, I mean, you released an EP in 2016, and I for my personal, I wouldn't say it's like a drastic change, but I definitely would say that there's a lot of maturity and evolution demonstrated on there as well. So it wasn't like that you wanted your EP that you released in 2016 to dictate the direction Mason Hill would take for the future, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can still hear that EP through and through. The songwriters haven't changed in the band. The EP, that sound was still Mason Hill. It just wasn't, it wasn't where we are now. But it still has that flavour, that same vein through it, I think. Which is good, because I think if we'd just released a completely different sound to what we had before, a lot of people that had hopped on board early would have just been like, what is this, different band. But it's just, as you say, it's came a long way from that point, but you can still feel the same energy, I think, that was in that EP. It's just refined now, hopefully.
Yeah, well, you know what's you should have really just totally trolled your fans and just made this album like full blown death metal or black metal. Really makes them.
Yeah, yeah, totally. We could have done, and we did. We jokingly talked about just completely releasing something off the cuff, a hip hop album, just to see what happened. But I think we've tortured our poor fans enough, to be honest, with the wait. So yeah, we gave them this instead.
Hey, who knows? Maybe that'll be the way to really get the band to the skyrocket. Like the headline will be "Band Shocks fan with complete drastic change spawns riots."
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I'll see if I can shoehorn any funk into the next record, and we'll see if we can get a sort of Daft Punk vibe going on.
Yeah. Well, I do got to say, this is a great album, Against the Wall. It definitely wasn't a Chinese democracy scenario. So excellent work.
Thankfully.
Yeah. And, what's funny is, too, like you mentioned, like, that you have a classic rock with a lot of modern flavor behind it, which I think is actually really good because, like, I feel like you have a sound that could cater towards like old school rock fans, people who were growing up with, Rolling Stones and Guns N' Roses and all that. But I think people who were listening to more modern rock bands such as Shinedown or Crossfade or 3 Days Grace could also appreciate this. So I think really Against the Wall is kind of like a bridge between the old and the modern.
Yeah, I mean that's what we were hoping for with it. I mean, all the bands you name, your Rolling Stones, your Guns N' Roses and stuff, that's what I grew up listening to as well. Is what I came up. It's why I picked up a guitar, why I picked up a bass, why I started writing music, and it's definitely there. It's in the bones of the record. But with all these different bands coming through into our sound and tastes, it's became a bit more. Yeah, it's got a more modern edge, and I'm glad that sort of came across in what we've done. So we're not going to turn into some electro band in the next album, but I think you'll see a lot more of that happen again. There'll be another progression into using some more modern sounds and maybe slight moments of not electronic. That's probably the wrong word, but like messing around with synths and stuff and just bringing in extra sonic ideas.
Yeah. Was that always like a preconceived idea or always a goal, or did it kind of just like happen that way with the course of the 5-year songwriting process of this?
Yes, it's all been pretty natural. We've never said we need this song to sound like such and such a band, or this song needs to be the song that makes it to radio. We've never really thought like that. I mean, as time goes by, you obviously have outside influences that we'll talk about, getting the 3-minute style song that needs to be catered for radio. But I think what we try and do is make the song sound great and, then hand it to the people in the suits that know the stuff about what's going to cater to radio and whatnot. And 9 times out of 10, there's already something in that stack of songs that's going to meet that. So that's great. I think it's always good to just, stick to your own vision, and hopefully that's what, the wider industry's looking for at that point. But I think it's important not to try and cater too much to that when you're writing the songs. I know that we certainly don't at the moment.
Yeah. I never understood this. Maybe you're in the band, so you could explain it to me. What is it about radio that like they want the songs to be shorter? Because like so far the only 3 bands I know that stay on radio or like make it to radio that like really thrive on longer songs would be Metallica, Avenged Sevenfold, and Tool. Those seem to be like the only 3 bands that kind of like get away with that a little bit. But what is it about like making a short song? Is it just because of attention spans lately?
I mean, it probably is. You'd have to ask the men with the money on this one, but Yeah, I guess it's all to do with how much you can cram into a short space of time and how much ad revenue you can get from it. I guess, isn't it? It's the same with anything nowadays. I guess it's all about quantity over quality. Sometimes I dare say, but I think it's still got to have a certain quality to get to a radio station. So it's I dare say it's the money men that make these kind of decisions and try and move the tracks along a lot quicker, but it kind of works for us in a way because our songs, by their very nature, they don't tend to stretch out. We don't go on Tool-style 13-minute songscapes, luckily. So we can accidentally fall into a radio band without trying too much. But I mean, if you left us in a room for a few hours, I'm sure we could come up with something, 35-minute prog extravaganza if we need to.
Yeah. And being the bass player of the band, kind of going back to your songwriting process, do you need music before you lay down your parts? I mean, first off, I want to say, it's rock and roll. I'm sure, bass players have all had their fair share of, bass player jokes. But
I'll get my pen out and write some new ones down.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. I mean, with bass on this record, it was, a lot of it it's much more about the punchy rhythm than following the guitar for me anyway. I know rock bass is usually just straight up balls to the wall. You want it just to hold down the sort of most basic element of the song and just keep it driving. With this record, we really tried to make it part of the percussion as well. So you'd probably have to get your good headphones on to listen to a lot of what the bass is doing in certain songs. Things like DNA, the drums and bass, they're like really locked in, and a lot of that comes from just our backgrounds and what we listened to growing up. The bass was never just straight AC/DC style hold down the rhythm. It was always much more rhythmic, funky, and it was always about getting in the pocket with the drummer. And I think me and Craig have worked really hard on that. And the rhythm section in this album sounds great. It sounds really big, and I think it gives it a little edge that just holding down that simple driving bass rhythm doesn't always give.
Yeah, well, that's something I've noticed about this album. It has like a rhythm-driven rock effect behind it, where and not to discredit the guitar work by any stretch of the means, but like the guitar work has a real punchy rhythm aspect to it. The drums and the bass all work well together. I think most of the melody just comes from the vocals in general, where is the band is really just the band is delivering the punch, whereas the vocals are kind of just delivering all the melody at the same time. I think that's kind of what makes your sound rather unique. It's normally with a lot of rock bands, it's very melodic vocals, but then also very, very melodic guitars, while the rhythm section is just kind of in the background a little bit. So I think with this, it kind of allows every member to bring in their own rhythmic contributions.
Yeah, I think we always did say that when we were making this album, that that you need to get that rhythm section down first. It's the foundation you're building everything else on top of. If that's rubbish and everything else is perfect, you've still got a pretty rubbish sounding album. So I think we know where the strengths of certain parts of the band lie, and one of them is Scott's vocals and the melodies that are going to lay over the top of that. So when it's right, we want all the focus to be on Scott's voice, and when it's time for him to step back, we'll bring out one of James's David Gilmour-esque solos over the top of Where I Belong or something. So yeah, it's all about knowing when to push certain elements forward and when to let them step back, I think.
Yeah. And how do you know ultimately when the song is finished? Because again, I think you thrive on really making a short song catchy and punchy. I feel with this album, there's really no filler or there's no overkill on it. You could really start off with Reborn, you could go on to Hold On, you could go to We Pray, you could go to DNA and all that. I feel they're all equally catchy, and they all kind of have a similar song length. I think Where I Belong is the longest song on the album, but how do you know when to say that the song is finished? Do you just follow the standard verse chorus structure? Is that kind of how you look at it?
I think the honest answer is we don't know when the song is finished. If we had another year's delay hit us, we would have probably kept working on these songs and kept changing them. So sometimes it is actually just about stepping back and taking some outside perspective as to when the song's finished. I think we can be a bit over the top with our like how perfectionist we can be. So yeah, it's hard to say when a song's finished because we have personally thought these songs were finished 3 or 4 times each. This time it was because we were happy with them, but we also had to be in the studio to record them. So it was necessity. They were done because there was no extra time to keep working on them. And I think that's something I'm really looking forward to on the next album. We're not going to have 5 years to record and create this. We are on a time limitation, and we will just need to, write a song and say, right, it's done, that we're happy with it, and we can step back and just, let the song be the song. So yeah, I don't think we do know when the song's finished.
Yeah. And it sounds like for the next album, you're almost kind of like using pressure to your advantage in a way, right?
Definitely, we're already well into the writing process with new songs. How they come out depends on how the world pans out over the next year or so. But we'll hopefully have some new tracks out before a second album, just to keep allowing the new fans to hear the development of the sound and stuff. But we're well into the writing stages now.
Awesome. So that leads me to my final question. Just before we go, is there anything else with Mason Hill that you would like to promote? Any shout outs you would like to give? Or, even though I'm asking this way too far in advance, being that, Against the Wall just came out, but obviously we'll be expecting some new Mason Hill fairly soon, right?
We will be expecting new Mason Hill fairly soon, yeah, definitely. We've just released our cover of the Foo Fighters' Best of You. You can catch that on Spotify right now. If you haven't checked out the album, of course, please go and check out the album. It's my favourite one we've made so far, the only one we've made so far. And yeah, if you're tuning in from the UK or anything, we are out on tour in the UK in September. We hope to go further afield in 2022 into the continent and beyond.
And you'll come to the States eventually, right?
That's the aim. That's definitely the aim. If you will have us, we'll be definitely aiming to get out there as soon as we possibly can.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Matthew of Mason Hill. Be sure to check out Against the Wall if you haven't already. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.